Hello and welcome to the April 2nd edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Short News. My name is Tom Luongo. We've got a lot to talk about today. I want to talk about Brexit because we've got new news, we've got new stuff, and I haven't done one of these for a couple days since, well, Brexit. It's the most important political event of the 21st century, and therefore it's the thing we have to continue to focus on. Before we get started, while we wait for some people to get into the stream, you can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. If this is the first time you're watching this today, please give a like and subscribe down below. Maybe even bang the notification bell so that the next time I do this, which is a couple of times a week, along with Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. on Mondays and Friday at 8:30. It would be great to have you all there. It's a good time. I have, I think, the most informed, well-informed audience on the internet. But be that as it may, that's maybe just hubris talking on my part. I don't know. Doesn't matter. You can follow my work at tomluongo.me. You can also follow me on Twitter at TFL1728, and you can support my work over at Patreon/GoldGoatsAndGuns. All right. So now that we've established some ground rules, let's get started. What's happened? So this afternoon, after a 7-hour cabinet meeting, Theresa May comes out and makes a short statement. Prime Minister Theresa May comes out and makes a short statement saying that she's now going to meet with Labour opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn to try and sort out this whole Brexit mess. She's left not a whole lot of options on the table because the withdrawal agreement has to be a part of whatever whatever they agree to. Okay? And I was watching Nigel Farage's show on LBC earlier, and they hashed out a number of scenarios, and I'm going to go through a couple of things at this point. But this is, I think, Theresa May's last play to try and betray Brexit. And believe me, at this point, the betrayal, the kind of betrayal kabuki theater has now reached its final act. I don't know how many acts there are in kabuki theater, but let's just say it's Act 5 of your typical 5-act structure. So we're here. We're in it now. She announced today that she's going to seek a longer extension. There's an amendment on the table backed by both Oliver Letwin on the right and Yvette Cooper on the left in order to create an amendment, an undateable amendment to the Article 15 law, which would allow them to insert date here in the future until we get a deal. What she said effectively today was that she is going to seek a longer extension, try to be one as short as possible, whatever the hell that means, in order to get some kind of deal through both the British Parliament and European Council of Ministers. That's what's going on here. It's a complete betrayal of Brexit, and I'm sure that everybody is losing their minds on both sides of the fence. So this is where we are. And I've noticed that some of the chat's already coming in saying the globalists were never going to give up this easily. Of course they weren't. Steve Bannon reminded us right after Donald Trump was elected in 2016. He said, if you think that they're going to give you your country back easily, you're a lunatic, or something to that effect. And he was right. They're not. They're not going to give an inch on this. And Theresa May is absolutely working for Berlin at this point, and or Brussels. Doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter why she's doing it. It doesn't matter. We can be generous to her. I did that the other night on my live stream. Last night on my live stream, I put out the generous version of Theresa May, saying maybe she's just so scared of the potential fallout, financial fallout of a no-deal Brexit which would wreak untold havoc in the end, in the long run, not on the British economy, but on the European banking system, which at this point is the confidence in it is hanging by a thread. And that thread is, can they keep the Brits on the hook as a milkable tax cow in perpetuity, preferably without a voice in the matter? Because that's what Angela Merkel wants, because that's what Angela Merkel wrote in her withdrawal agreement, which she took to Theresa May to get past British Parliament, which can't pass the current Parliament. So Cooper and Letwin have done their job. He's the he of the arch stabbed the Prime Minister in the back persuasion, and she of the angling for Jeremy Corbyn's job in case he falters, because that's really, and she's obviously the preferred person to lead Labour if the general election were to occur. So remember this. The EU does not want the Brits to leave. No matter what they say, no matter what they talk about, oh, we're prepared for a no deal, and you people get your act together, or we're kicking you out. Nonsense. Lies. The only one who thinks that way is Guy Verhofstadt. Got news for you. He doesn't have that much power. Okay? If Angela Merkel told him to shut up tomorrow, he would shut up tomorrow. Same thing. You notice how Donald Tusk isn't saying anything today. He came out and said, well, every passions are running high and we should all just wait to see what happens. Translation, everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. This has all been part of the plan. It's always going to come down to this. It's always going to come down to Corbyn and May having to get together and in a bipartisan manner, betray Brexit. Both sides of the House are going to have to come together, heal the divisions, come together in the spirit of cooperation, in the spirit of the union. Let's not betray our democracy. Let's give the people some of what they want while preserving the core of what we think they need. Let us do this and come together in a sense of national unity while we fuck you in the ass. Because that's what bipartisanship is. Libertarians say it all the time. Bipartisanship is simply just another way of saying both parties are going to get together and screw you and leave you with no other options. Because once both parties betray you, where are you going to go? See, the very fact of the matter is that Labor, Conservative, the Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. It's a Hobson's choice if the leadership of both parties are in the pay of the people who stand behind them. So that's where we are. And they are desperate to avoid a no deal because it means that untold damage to the German economy in the end. Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank can't get together and finish their merger without raising capital. How are they going to raise capital? How are they going to raise $6 billion for a failed merged bank that is indebted up to its eyeballs and has a derivatives book so toxic it makes the stuff the Joker fell into look like an ice cream cone? Okay, that's what we're dealing with here. They know what the score is. The Germans have run roughshod over Europe and expanded their economy on the basis on the backs of being a loan shark to the rest of Southern Europe, for most of Southern Europe, while extracting untold trillions from the British economy over the last 40 years. That's what's going on now. And they want that to continue because that's how they're going to continue the EU. The EU is a parasite. It's like a tapeworm that can only grow now by holding on to what it has and going and grabbing the next country and milking it dry and sucking it all up into Germany. And the political upheaval that we're seeing across Europe, including Brexit, and Italy, and Austria, and Latvia, and Sweden, and all these other places that are supposed to be bastions of enlightened European social democracy. They're all rebelling against this stuff. Because because that's what happens that's what the government does, ultimately. It's what these welfare warfare states do. They hollow out the middle class. They take the money and destroy the productive middle class of any good free market, vaguely capitalist society, suck it up into the upper classes, and then the lower classes blame the bourgeoisie, the middle class, in classic Marxist theory, classic Marxist analysis. And then they blame the middle class people for not being enlightened enough to see that they're the ones screwing everybody over. It's no, and not voting with them to go and take over and eat the rich. It doesn't work that way. But that's where we are. That's where we are. So, watch how this plays out. If Corbyn goes along with anything that May does, and I'm telling you right now, that if Jeremy Corbyn is being told right now that if he wants to remain as head of Labour and wants to get anything at all of his plan after a general election comes through to win this. And he's doing the political calculations. He's not stupid. He knows that if he betrays Brexit along with May, May will be hurt worse than him. Because May has now put it off on him. And the Tories are screaming. And the right will get split in half as the Tories collapse. Nigel Farage's Brexit party rises. UKIP gets some votes. The whole right is split along the lines. But in a majoritarian system, first past the post system, it won't matter. So, I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see Brexit betrayed. But this is the best I've got at this point. Now, if Corbyn drives a hard bargain here, he could go for a general election on the fact that May doesn't have any leadership, mandate, doesn't have any mandate to lead. So, Ned Ludd, that's exactly what I just said. Ned Ludd says, look, Corbyn can do what he likes and blame May for everything. Dude, that's exactly what I just said. But he's going to get blamed for some of it because he will have betrayed his own manifesto and what he ran on, which is that free movement of people will end. And any customs union that comes down the pike, a full customs union, which what he's already argued for this. The one who's going to, Labor may come out of this looking better, but I don't think so, because at the end of the day, everybody's going to come out looking terrible on this. So, no one is going to survive this. No major party is going to survive this. There's going to be Labor MPs that are recalled. There's going to be Tory MPs that are recalled. There's going to be all of it. That's what they're playing for, though. They're not playing for a Corbyn government. What they're playing for is a Labour government. I don't think Corbyn's going to last. I think Corbyn is going to get stabbed in the back by Cooper and Watson and the rest of them. That's what I think is going to happen. You wait. Dominic Grieve will get deselected in Beaconsfield and then turn up as a Labour MP somewhere else. I don't know. What is he going to do? Move, as you Brits would say, move house and then get voted in as somebody else? Total cavitation of suck. Absolutely. All of these, but they're going to move to betray Brexit. Absolutely. Now, the only other option here is if Theresa May, because remember, if you listen to her statement, she said the withdrawal agreement has to be ratified. Whatever we do, all we can do now is add to the withdrawal agreement, make it even worse than it currently is, to make Jeremy Corbyn happy. So, now what? The best thing to come out of Brexit, as Mike X just said, is that it'll break up the Tories and Labour. The best thing that comes out of this is exactly what came out of Russiagate. The outing of the fact that your political class in Britain is as corrupt, if not more corrupt, and insulated than the one here in the United States. Y'all had an opportunity back in 2011, truly, to change the way this went forward. You could have gone for proportional representation. Had you done that, you wouldn't be in the mess you're in today. I don't know that you'd be looking at Brexit today. We discussed this last night. So, but at this point, after 170 MPs and cabinet ministers went to Theresa May over the weekend and said, you must put no deal on the table, she ignored it. But now that's 170. That's 170 potential defectors and a vote of no confidence against her. And if she can't put a government together between then and now, if she can't keep the government together and they can't put a government together between now and April 12th, why do you think? And this is why I think, actually, now that I think about it, that letter from this weekend is probably what prompted this move. The cabinet knew that they could not survive this. Because those Tory backbenchers, all they have to do is call up Corbyn and say, look, if you go for a no confidence against this woman, we'll vote for you. This is what they just game planned on LBC, and I was like, that makes perfect sense to me. And this is why May is now finally reaching out to Corbyn to say, okay, no, you can share in this, and we can bring everybody together. So, it becomes very interesting to see if that's going to happen. And the Cooper-Letwin amendment is their insurance policy that if the government does fall in all of this, that there's an unlimited extension to Article 50, so that they don't just quote unquote crash out of the European Union on April 12th. That's where they are. But there's no political organization amongst the minor parties at this point to, in any way, manner, shape, or form, see a real realignment of British politics in this first go round. I don't see it. But moreover, the last thing about this, which is very important, is that they want to get this done in such a way as the Brits don't stand for European elections. That's the thing that no one can get around, right? So everybody's trying to stop this, and I really do believe that this is crunch time. This is desperation. This is their last gambit to try and betray Brexit. If May and Corbyn can't come to an arrangement, then the government's going to fall, and they're going to leave on the 12th with no deal, because there's no other option at this point, because the EU does not want 73 Nigel Farages in the EU Parliament, because they're already staring at having to somehow ring fence off 30 to 32% Eurosceptics. Imagine if that number now adds another 73 to a parliament of 778. It'd be something like 37, 38%. They'd be the biggest bloc in the EU Parliament, which would also make things very, very ugly for the EU. Because make no mistake, go back to the 2015 or the 2014, the last European parliamentary elections, 2014. Go back to that. UKIP had its greatest voter turnout ever in that election, because, and we've seen these things happen in European parliamentary elections before. Look, national government-wise, people tend to vote much more conservatively than they do for European parliamentary elections. Meaning, not conservative, be conservative Tory, but conservative relative to their main party. Like, Tory voters and Labour voters and Lib Dem voters and whatever, they'll all be more than willing to send UKIP guys to the EU as a protest vote, but not actually send them to the House of Commons. It'd be the same thing here in the United States. If we were in some way a member of the EU, I got news for you. The Libertarians would take 15 or 18% of the vote. The Greens would take 7% of the vote, 8% of the vote. I'm dead serious. Because conservative voters here, Republican voters here, would absolutely back the LP as a party to send representatives to the EU. Why not? And that's what happened with UKIP, and that's what then prompted Brexit, the Cameron to put the referendum on the table in the next general election, and here we are from there. And that's why this has all come out. So don't think that they haven't done that political calculus in Brussels, because they have, and in Westminster, because they have, and they don't like it. Which again also means that just because everybody in Britain asks for an extension doesn't mean they're actually going to get it. News at 13 tells us that it seems that the strategy is to grind down the nationalist opposition until they give in to despair and just let it go. That is exactly. We've moved from Project Fear to Project Attrition. I've got an article up on my blog over Gold, Goats, and Guns that I just published about an hour and a half ago, saying exactly this: that we've moved from Project Fear. They're going to do the fear thing. You just wait. We get to April 10th, and there's no agreement. The pound will be trading at $1.28. Mark my words. Mark my words. Unless they can craft a deal between now and then, and the EU signs off on it. But we get to the next European summit on April the 10th, and there's nothing in place. The pound will drop to $1.28, $1.26. You wait. And that'll be all over the BBC. It'll be all over everywhere. There'll be a session of Parliament. They'll have the friggin' pound. They'll have a pound ticker on the board, just like they did in 2008 in the U.S. Congress. the day they were voting on the TARP bill, they wheeled in a stock ticker so that everybody could stand there and point and go, look, the Dow is down by 770 points. Oh my God, the world is going to end. This is what they're going to do. But we're beyond that now. We're well into Project Attrition now. So, just reading the comments as I go through, because there's some new people in here, and it seems like, interestingly enough, that we have remainers in this in this thing. This is very interesting because this is definitely a Leave channel, even though I'm American. So I just find this. I think that's where we are, right? You got to remember that they don't want the Brits in the European Parliament. They want them in the EU, but they don't want them voiced anymore. They're tired of the voice because having Farage in Parliament, having people like him in Parliament, they can't handle that. They cannot have opposition. Look, the EU has moved in so many different ways, and Angela Merkel in Germany and everywhere else. They've moved in so many ways to stifle opposition, information, and opposition opinion from making it out into the regular news feed. Merkel was the first one to start, raiding people's houses for their Facebook posts. You do realize that, right? She put this freaking law into place in 2015. For Christ's sake, the Germans have been raiding people's houses for things that people have written on Facebook. It's insane. Mark Malone says, the globalists understand that if they force a strong country like the UK into reversing their vote, any other country in Europe will see independence as hopeless, and this strengthens their hand. That's where they are. I agree. That's what they're playing for. But don't think for a minute that the withdrawal agreement is signed and it's done, and this is the only one that's imaginable, and there's no room to negotiate. Bullshit. These people are scared to death that the Brits win here. And but you have to understand that they've had people on the inside working for them the entire time. So, and they've been negotiating from that position. It's the same way they negotiated with Greece in 2015. Okay? They never had to work very hard because while Varoufakis, the finance minister, was perfectly willing to take the country out of the euro, Tsipras was not. And so they knew all they had to do was pressure Tsipras and he would fold because he was always for the European Union. And the same thing here. Theresa May is an establishment Tory. She's an established member of the British upper middle class. She's a Remainer. Fun thing. Good evening, good afternoon, how are you? I know it's evening where you are. Corbyn is not going to help May out. I wouldn't. I don't know. I don't think he will unless he's being pressured that he will be ousted from Labour. Unless he cuts a deal with her. But we'll see. I hope he doesn't. This is where I have to. This is one of those things where you're sitting here going, okay, now I got to vote. Now I got to root for Jeremy Corbyn. So it will be a long war of attrition, but not if they leave on WTO terms on the 12th. I don't think Corbyn risks taking the government down before April 12th without passing the Cooper-Letwin amendment that's scheduled for vote, I think probably on Wednesday or Thursday. By the way, they technically left on the 29th of March. This was not illegal in any way. There are legal challenges going on to the extension that's already in place. Not that it actually matters. It's like making that at this point, that argument is like arguing that the 16th Amendment here in the United States wasn't actually ratified. People still pay their income tax every day. So there's de jure and there's de facto. And de facto is that we're in a lawless state anyway at this point, because it should have been put through the entire that amendment had to be put through the entire legislative process. And it wasn't. It was just rammed through. Just rammed through. So, I don't know what else to tell you, but seems to me Farage's take on all of this was that the possibility of the government falling rose a little bit today. I still think no deal Brexit is the most likely outcome because I don't really believe that Corbyn and May can come to an agreement on this if the DUP and the ERG and the rest of them, if you start to see even more Tories hold the line. And I think that the 7-hour cabinet meeting today that ended with this statement where we have to punt and ask Jeremy Corbyn for help, I don't know. This seems to me like the Philip Hammond, Amber Rudd wing of the May's cabinet is at their wit's end, and they don't have any other options. Corbyn is on the cusp of forcing an election and the Tory party collapsing. Why would he help May out now? It's more BS for May, in my opinion, says Fun Fact. I hope so. I hope so. I mean, look, Corbyn would get what he wants here, which is ultimately get the Corbyn personally would get what he wants, right? The Tories collapse. The Brits leave the EU, which is what he's wanted from the beginning. He personally, not Labour. They leave the EU. He blames crashing, quote unquote, crashing out on the Tories. The general election happens. Problem with him is I don't know that that's actually going to work for him. I don't know that the Tories, I don't know that if Brexit actually happens on WTO terms, regardless of how this works, where do the voters go? Do we see UKIP all of a sudden get 25% of the electorate? I don't. Rees-Mogg didn't seem to know that EU and May could just do an extension with the stroke of a pen. Yeah, he kept arguing that they don't have enough time. They have to. It takes at least 14 days for an amendment to a law to go through. He's said this for weeks, for months. Corbyn is only up by 5 points on the most unpopular PM in history. Let that sink in. Exactly. I don't know where this ends. I mean, I'm just looking around. It's like I don't see a massive surge in UKIP. I mean, 9% is good, but they've got to get above 15% to even matter. Because you can only go from 15, you have to cross that 16% chasm. I talked about this before in terms of AFD. This is, we're now into kind of overtime stuff. You got to remember that for a political movement to rise above the 9 or 10 or even 15% threshold, they have to become the party, the group, the thing. We're talking politics, we're talking market penetration for fucking iPhones. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. For something to cross that 16% market share, you have to rebrand yourself and become something better. And I don't see UKIP becoming the Brexit party. I don't see either the Tories or Labour becoming the Brexit party unless the hardline Tory backbenchers force Theresa May's hand, force them out on the 12th of April, and they all go back to the constituents and say, we did what you asked us to do. And the constituents and all the local Tory parties put different people up to stand for the election. And at that point, we could still see a hung government, but it's made up of more Brexiteers than Remainers. It's going to be interesting. The Tories and Labour are in an existential predicament. Parties with momentum are the SNP, the DUP, and UKIP, but not critical mass. And critical mass in a majoritarian situation, Hayakatin, is the most important part. Okay, that's the most important part. I mean, I've seen this before. I've seen it. We're seeing it now with AFD in Germany. I said 7 months ago, I said they started hitting 16, 17%, but they couldn't break through it. I said if they don't rebrand themselves it was last summer during the immigration fallout before the Bavarian elections, where Horst Seehofer and Merkel were fighting amongst themselves over this, and he resigned, and then all of this in order to try and stop AFD from climbing and winning in in Bavaria, what I said then was they have to cross the 16% chasm. If they don't do it, they're going to fall back to 10, 12, 13%. The Greens actually rose above the 16% chasm as an alternative to the Social Democrats. So as the Social Democrats imploded, the Greens got their votes. Now what we have is a complete mess in Germany that's actually allowed Merkel to stay in power, which is now having... And because AfD has been incompetent at moving beyond that point by saying, look, we will be the party for all of Germany, and not just the anti-immigration party or the anti-Merkel party. The fact that they didn't make that shift is now affecting Brexit. Because if they had made that shift, Merkel would be out of power and Brexit would have already occurred. So the electoral future is a very low turnout and hung parliament forever. Mike, I can't argue with you on that. Alexander Kalish says that he thinks that they're gonna pop out on a hard exit on the 12th because they can't get a consensus. At this point, we have Schrodinger's Brexit. I said this a couple of weeks ago. They voted against every version of Brexit. They voted for no deal, and they voted against no Brexit. They voted against everything. And it's, Brexit's just this thing sitting in a box that nobody dares open because they don't want to find out what actually is inside. And what's inside is no deal. I don't think the S&P has any real momentum either. I think they're actually trading on past laurels of getting the first referendum through. But I think that from what I've read and what I've heard from Scots and from other people and just looking at polling, I don't see that. What I see is a bunch of fucking ridiculous, hardcore left-wing socialists wanting independence so that they can be and they've tied their ideological stance to a second referendum for Scotland, and they think that that's what the Scots actually want. They're doing exactly what the Democrats do here in the United States. They take their electoral mandate on one issue, being hating Trump, for example, or hating Republicans for not doing what they wanted them to do, and then turn around and say, oh, that means that the country's actually moving hardcore socialist and we need a Green New Deal. No, but that's what you get with people who live in this freaking bubble. And it's the same thing with the S&P. You can see it on Ian Blackford's face. He's completely out of touch with reality. Remaining is the wet dream of every progressive liberal and the corporate class. Making Merkel leaving doesn't change that. No, but Merkel is the key in terms of how everything is playing out, because she is a tough negotiator. She's very important to this. If you put somebody else in charge from Germany, if you have a different government, if you have an electoral morass in Germany, then they don't have a united front today. Do you really think that drunk Jean-Claude Juncker would be instructing Michel Barnier this way? No. Do you really think that any of them, other than Merkel, has the ability to whip these people into line and get them to do what she wants them to do? No. Robert Johnson says, I'm a Scot. I can't bear to watch the S&P. Dude, I'm Italian, and I love the Scots. Right? I mean, I look at this and I could go on and on about the U.S. Civil War still being an extension of the Scottish-British fight, and I go on and on about this, and I watch this and I'm like, God, what are you fucking people doing? How could you turn some of the proudest people in the world into a bunch of fucking welfare queens? It's disgusting. The S&P is writing that sentiment, but that sentiment is now wearing thin. We're 4 years out from that. And they're still making themselves out to be the party of the second independence referendum. And I don't think that's going to work. So that's all. I mean, so how will they keep England in the EU? How will they weasel this before April 12th? I think it's already been laid out. I think that you have a couple of different options here. One, the Cooper-Letwin amendment could easily create an open-ended extension. Theresa May just said she's willing to put on the table an open-ended extension. She's not talking about any kind of particular extension length. So those two things are now in agreement. We have two, and then if you get her and Corbyn to come together and craft some sort of deal, which basically, how about Theresa May's deal plus the permanent customs union? You don't think that that would pass? You don't think Corbyn at this point would sign off on that? He's already betrayed the Labour manifesto from the 2017 general election anyway. He's already betrayed them on free movement of peoples. He's already betrayed them on everything else. Why not that? And, you know, people like Cooper and Tom Watson and the rest of them are just waiting to stab him in the back with, you know, the next time we come to a general election. You wait. I'm telling you, this is what's coming. This is what's coming. First, you cut back on the oil and gas industry, and then you get a lot of underemployment. Oh, yeah. How you turn Scotland, how you turn the proudest people in the world into a bunch of welfare queens. First, you cut back on the oil and gas industry because the North Sea is drying up, and then you get a lot of underemployment, and the British welfare state does the rest. I agree. I know how it's done. It's just frustrating to see that it has done. It's nice to know Hayakatin that you and I are on the same page on this. He's new. Hayakatin just showed up in the stream for the first time last night. We had a great time. All right, I'm at 36 minutes now. I don't think I want to keep doing this. These are supposed to be the short news, not my normal 1 hour length live streams. Now I think we're well past the post. So why don't we do this again? Why don't we make a day? We'll do this again on Thursday. I'm not sure if we'll talk about Brexit because I do want to talk about some other things. But we can definitely do this again, and we definitely do this every Monday night at 8 and every Friday night at 8:30. Come hell or high water. If I don't show up, oh my, I have 90 people screaming at me on Twitter and other places, my private Slack channel for my subscribers and others, saying, "Dude, where are you?" If I'm 5 minutes late, I get 5 messages anymore. I love the, you know. I love the enthusiasm, but sometimes, you know, I gotta pee, right? All right, so let's do this again real soon now. Thank you guys for showing up. I think all the comments today have been great. I love seeing some new faces in the channel. It's been a lot of fun. All right, you guys take care. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.